combining shaders in cycles. In this video you will give the eye a material that is a combination of different shaders using the node editor. So let's hop straight on over into Blender. So I've got my two eyeballs here. Remember, they're a mirror of one another. So one of these is real and one of them is essentially a reflection of it. As I mentioned before, make sure if you go to flat shading that the eyeballs are facing outwards from your rabbit. I'm going to go straight into this eyeball here using the numpad full stop. That looks like it is the one. Yes, it is when I hop into edit mode. Right, so I'm just going to remember to turn smooth shading back on. Eyeballs are quite smooth. So with the whole eyeball selected, we're going to assign it a material. So let's go to the materials tab. I'm going to make this a bit bigger, and I'm going to create a new material and just call it eyeball. Now we're not going to see too much of this eyeball, but it's still worth getting this bit right. And just leaving it as it is at the moment, I'm going to set the colour to bright white. And I'm going to assign it to the ball. Excellent. Now, it's not going to be just a diffuse colour, it's going to be a mixture of that plus a glossy colour, because eyeballs are slightly glossy. So, let's go ahead and do that now. So we need to open up the node editor. So I'm going to create I'm going to go at the top here. Wow, first time we've had to do something here. I'm just going to press the plus here, and I'm just going to name this something else. I don't know, eyeball for the moment, because that's what this workspace I'm using for. I'm going to generate a new workspace from here, and the reason why I've done that is I know that going through this process I'm going to ruin my default layout, and of course it's going to be specialist for just this one case. Anyway, so we're going to have to open up the node editor. There we go. Wow, that's small, so I'm going to zoom in, and we can see the way it's set up. We've got a diffuse shader, and the output is what it looks like. So I'm going to turn on rendered mode here, so we can see what's going on, and not a lot at the moment. That's probably because there's no light in our scene, so I'm just going to turn the lamp on as well. Much better. So we've got this default shader here. In fact, I'm going to change the lamp type to a sun. So we've got our eye here, and let's go back to it. We have a diffuse shader going into the output, which is what it looks like. Now I'm going to go down here to where it says add, and go to another shader, and it be a glossy shader. And I'm going to place that here. Now the next thing I need to do is mix these two shaders into one before they go to the surface. In order to do that, I'm going to use something called a mix shader. Now there are two ways essentially of combining these shaders. One's either a mix shader or an add shader. Now you have to be careful with an add shader because it literally adds the values together, so you can end up with something that's incredibly bright. But in this case we want a mixed shader because we want to be able to control the ratio between diffuse and glossy. So I'm going to add this time in a different way with Shift and A, like you're used to when adding a primitive or something like that in the 3D editor mode. And I need to add a shader of type mix. Now another way of doing that is if you know the name is you can click on search here. And I've obviously previously searched mix shader. The moment you type in mix, it's one of the options there. So I'm going to click mix shader. Now I can immediately place it on top of this line here. You see it goes orange? Well, when I click, it's going to link it in. Brilliant. The final thing we need to do is go from where it says BSDF on the glossy shader, plug it in to the shader down here. And now we can see we've actually got a bit of specularity, a bit of gloss to our eyeball. The final thing with the mix shader is, of course, there's this factor here. And so we can make it 100% diffuse, completely ignoring the settings we've got on glossy, or we can make it 100% glossy. We don't want either, we want it somewhere in between, and we can always go ahead and alter this later, but the default value of about 0.2 or thereabouts is perfect. It gives us a little bit of a gloss to it. Perfect. So I feel a challenge coming on for you guys. I would like you to create the rest of the eye materials. So go ahead and create and assign the following additional materials: the iris and pupil. Use the eyeball material as the starting point, remembering to make it unique for each material. And finally, use the reference material if you find that necessary to make sure that the eye has the pupil and the iris in the right proportions. So pause the video now and give that a go. Okay guys, welcome back. Let's hop over into Blender and assign the iris and pupil materials. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do, and you can do this in any particular order that you want to, but I'm going to create the two new materials first, or at least slots for them, and I'm going to click here and pick up eyeball, and then I'm going to click the number 2 here to make it a single user copy, and I'm going to call that iris. I'm going to do the same to this one underneath. I'm going to click here, select eyeball, make it a single user copy by clicking the number and naming that one pupil. Now depending on which one we're on, we obviously are going to be changing the materials. If we had not made them unique, when we change one material, it will change the original eyeball material, and we don't want that to happen. So with the pupil selected, I'm going to go down here to diffuse and change that to black. I'm just going to have my pupil completely black on both of these, so the colour of them black. Now for the time being, I'm going to make my iris probably an orangey brown colour to match the iris we were making earlier, but that will just be for reference because shortly the colour itself will be overridden by a texture, but that's in an upcoming lecture. So finally we need to assign these new materials. So I'm going to squeeze this one down a little, or if I pick up the right thing, let's pull this down. Let's bring the header bar back, put this little plus down here, and change this to solid. I want to hop into edit mode, and let's just have a look from about here. Let's deselect everything. I'm going to use circle select because it's going to be the easiest thing, and of course I can make the circle bigger and smaller. And I'm going to select everything here and assign. Let's deselect there and assign that. Of course you won't be able to see these assigned materials until you're in material view, so I'm going to leave it like that for the moment. Now finally the actual pupil itself. Now rabbit pupils are quite large, so let's go ahead here and again deselect everything, circle select about that much I think, and let's go to pupil, assign. Excellent. With that in mind, I'm probably going to make the iris slightly bigger as well, so I'm going to use a loop select here. So we've got face, I'm going to select that loop around there, go to iris and assign. So we've got all of our materials now assigned to our model. Of course we can very quickly check that and see how this is looking, so I'm going to go ahead and render the image. I believe I've got it all set up to render correctly. So what have we got here? There we go. So we've got our bunny eye. It's looking good. Excellent. How did you guys get on? Please share your eyeball in the discussions, and I will see you in the next lecture.